You may go there, for no longer is it high treason, punishable by disgrace or death, to cross 30°, or 175°. My name is Jefferson Turck. I am a lieutenant in the Navy, in the great Pan-American Navy, the only navy which now exists in all the world. I was born in Arizona, in the United States of North America, in the year of our Lord 2116. Therefore, I am 21 years old. In early boyhood, I tired of the teeming cities and overcrowded rural districts of Arizona. Every generation of Turks for over 2 centuries has been represented in the Navy. The Navy called to me, as did the free, wide, unpeopled spaces of the mighty oceans. And so I joined the Navy, coming up from the ranks, as we all must, learning our craft as we advance. My promotion was rapid, for my family seems to inherit naval law. We are born officers, and I reserve to myself no special credit for an early advancement in the service. At 20, I found myself a lieutenant in command of the aero submarine Coldwater, of the SS-96 class. The Coldwater was one of the first of the air and underwater craft which have been so greatly improved since its launching, and was possessed of innumerable weaknesses which fortunately have been eliminated in more recent vessels of similar type. Even when I took command, she was fit only for the junk pile, but the world-old parsimony of government retained her in active service, and sent 200 men to sea in her, with myself, a mere boy, in command of her, to patrol 30 from Iceland to the Azores. Much of my service had been spent aboard the great merchantmen of war. These are the utility naval vessels that have transformed the navies of old, which burdened the peoples with taxes for their support, into the present-day fleets of self-supporting ships that find ample time for target practice and gun drill, while they bear freight and the mails from the continents to the far-scattered island of Pan-America. This change in service was most welcome to me, especially as it brought with it coveted responsibilities of sole command, and I was prone to overlook the deficiencies of the Coldwater in the natural pride I felt in my first ship. The Coldwater was fully equipped for 2 months' patrolling, the ordinary length of assignment to this service, and a month had already passed, its monotony entirely unrelieved by sight of another craft, when the first of our misfortunes befell. We had been riding out a storm in an altitude of about 3,000 feet. All night we had hovered above the tossing billows of the moonlight clouds. The detonation of the thunder and the glare of lightning through an occasional rift in the vaporous wall proclaimed the continued fury of the tempest upon the surface of the sea. But we, far above it all, rode in comparative ease upon the upper gale. With the coming of dawn the clouds beneath us became a glorious sea of gold and silver, soft and beautiful, but they could not deceive us as to the blackness and the terrors of the storm-lashed ocean which they hid. I was at breakfast when my chief engineer entered and saluted. His face was grave, and I thought he was even a trifle paler than usual. "Well?" I asked. He drew the back of his forefinger nervously across his brow in a gesture that was habitual with him in moments of mental stress. "The gravitation screen generators, sir," he said. "Number 1 went to the bad about an hour and a half ago. We have been working upon it steadily since, but I have to report, sir, that it is beyond repair." "Number 2 will keep us supplied," I answered. "In the meantime we will send a wireless for relief." "But that is the trouble, sir," he went on. "Number two has stopped. I knew it would come, sir. I made a report on these generators 3 years ago. I advised then that they both be scrapped. Their principle is entirely wrong. They're done for." And, with a grim smile, "I shall at least have the satisfaction of knowing my report was accurate." "Have we sufficient reserves screened to permit us to make land, or, at least, meet our relief halfway?" I asked. "No, sir," he replied gravely. "We are sinking now." "Have you anything further to report?" I asked. "No, sir," he said. "Very good," I replied, and as I dismissed him I rang for my wireless operator. When he appeared I gave him a message to the Secretary of the Navy, to whom all vessels in service on 30 and 175 report direct. I explained our predicament and stated that with what screening force remained I should continue in the air, making as rapid headway towards St. John's as possible, and that when we were forced to take to the water I should continue in the same direction. The accident occurred directly over 30° and about 52°N. The surface wind was blowing a tempest from the west. To attempt to ride out such a storm upon the surface seemed suicidal, for the Coldwater was not designed for surface navigation except under fair weather conditions. Submerged or in the air, she was tractable enough in any sort of weather when under control, but without her screen generators she was almost helpless, since she could not fly, and if submerged, could not rise to the surface. All these defects have been remedied in later models, but the knowledge did not help us any that day aboard the slowly settling Coldwater, with an angry sea roaring beneath, a tempest raging out of the west, and 30° only a few knots astern. To cross 30 or 175 has been, as you know, the direst calamity that could befall a naval commander. Court-martial and degradation follow swiftly, unless, as is often the case, the unfortunate man takes his own life before this unjust and heartless regulation can hold him up to public scorn. There has been in the past no excuse, no circumstance that could palliate the offense. He was in command and he took his ship across 30. That was sufficient. It might not have been in any way his fault, as in the case of the Coldwater. It could not possibly have been justly charged to my account that the gravitation screen generators were worthless. But well I knew that should chance have it that we were blown across 30 today, as we might easily be before the terrific west wind that we could hear howling below us, the responsibility would fall upon my shoulders. In a way, the regulation was a good one, for it certainly accomplished that for which it was intended. We all fought shy of 30° on the east and 175° on the west, and though we had to skirt them pretty close, nothing but an act of God ever drew one of us across. You all are familiar with the naval tradition that a good officer could sense proximity to either line, and for my part, I am firmly convinced of the truth of this, as I am that the compass finds the north without recourse to tedious processes of reasoning. Old Admiral Sanchez was wont to maintain that he could smell 30, and the men of the first ship in which I sailed claimed that Coburn, the navigating officer, knew by name every wave along 30 from 60°N to 60°S. However, I'd hate to vouch for this. Well, to get back to my narrative, we kept on dropping slowly toward the surface, the while we bucked the west wind, clawing away from 30 as fast as we could. I was on the bridge, and as we dropped from the brilliant sunlight into the dense vapor of clouds, and on down through them